I never thought I'd be the type of woman to write something like this. I always prided myself on being loyal, caring, and fair. Lucas, my boyfriend, used to tell me all the time that I had a heart too big for my own good. Maybe he was right. Maybe that too big heart is what led me into this mess. I'm Olivia, 28 years old, living in Portland. My boyfriend, Lucas, is 30 and works in finance out in Chicago. We've been together for almost 3 years, and for the last year and a half, it's been long distance. We meet every couple of weeks, and every single time feels magical. But between those visits, the loneliness eats at me. That's when Jason came into the picture. Jason is 29, works in my office, and we first connected because of running. I had signed up for a marathon last year, and he was one of those hardcore runners who seemed to live for 5 a.m. runs. At first, it was harmless. He offered to train with me since we both worked similar hours, and I figured, why not? Lucas wasn't around, and I hated running alone. It started with early morning jogs 3 times a week. We'd talk during those long miles about work, about food, about life. He was easy to talk to, and soon he felt less like a coworker and more like a friend. The thing is, I've always been a foodie. Lucas and I bonded over cooking when we first met, sending each other recipes and planning meals for when we were together. Jason somehow slipped into that role, too. He'd bring me jars of jam his mom made, and I'd surprise him with homemade bread. It was innocent, or at least that's what I kept telling myself. But slowly it stopped feeling so innocent. Jason started sitting with me at lunch. We'd share food, laugh about office drama, and before I knew it, my phone was buzzing with his texts in the evenings. Sometimes he'd ask me to join him on Sunday afternoons to just hang out, coffee shops, bookstores, or just wandering the city. I said yes more often than I should have. Lucas never suspected anything. He trusted me completely, and part of me hated myself for even questioning what I was doing. I told myself it wasn't cheating. I wasn't kissing Jason, wasn't in bed with him. But deep down, I knew I was crossing lines. The worst part? I could feel Jason's feelings growing for me. The way his eyes lingered when I laughed, the way he found excuses to brush his hand against mine, the way he dropped subtle hints about how well we fit. And maybe, just maybe, I wasn't indifferent. Because here's the truth. If Lucas didn't exist, I could easily see myself falling for Jason. That thought terrified me. At night, when Lucas called, I'd pour love into my voice, reassure him, tell him how much I missed him. And I did miss him. I loved him. But I couldn't deny that during the day, Jason was filling a void Lucas couldn't from miles away. And I kept wondering, was I really as loyal and righteous as I thought? Or was I already betraying Lucas without even realizing it? I told myself it was fine, that I was just lonely, that Jason was just a friend. But a small, guilty voice in the back of my mind whispered, you know exactly what this is. And you know where it's headed. I used to think cheating was black and white. Either you slept with someone else, or you didn't. That was it. But now, living through this, I realize there are shades of gray that feel just as dangerous, if not worse. Because I hadn't kissed Jason. We hadn't touched in any intimate way. But I couldn't lie to myself anymore. Emotionally, I was drifting toward him. It started with the runs. Those morning miles turned into therapy sessions. He'd ask about my childhood, my dreams, my fears. He remembered every little thing I said, even the throwaway details Lucas sometimes forgot. One morning, I casually mentioned how much I loved a little bakery croissant near the river. The next week, Jason showed up at our run with a bag of them, warm and flaky, just for me. And I let myself melt a little. The lunches became more frequent, too. We'd sit together every day, trading bites of food, laughing like we'd known each other for years. At the office, people started teasing us, calling us the foodie duo. I laughed it off, but deep inside, I worried someone might see what I refused to say out loud. Sundays were the worst. They started as innocent coffee shop visits, but soon we were spending whole afternoons together. Once, we walked through Powell's books, and he bought me a novel he said reminded him of me. That night, I lay in bed, book on my chest, wondering why Lucas hadn't done something like that in so long. And that thought made me feel like the worst person alive. Because Lucas wasn't neglecting me. He was doing his best, calling every night, booking flights every couple of weeks, showering me with love when we were together. He trusted me so deeply it almost broke me. Yet, there I was, letting another man slip into places of my heart that Lucas couldn't reach from miles away. I told myself it was just friendship. But then there were the little moments I couldn't ignore. The way Jason's hand brushed mine when he handed me his coffee. The way his arm lingered on my back when we walked through a crowded bar with our coworkers. The way he looked at me, eyes soft, like I was more than just a colleague. And I didn't stop him. One night, Lucas and I were on the phone. He was exhausted from work, his voice heavy but warm. We talked about our plans for the holidays, and when we hung up, I should have felt happy. Instead, my phone buzzed with a text from Jason. Had fun today. You always make Sundays better. I stared at the message longer than I should have. And then I smiled. That was the moment I realized I wasn't just being naive. I was actively feeding this connection. I wasn't shutting it down. I was letting it grow. And I hated myself for it. Because I loved Lucas.
Truly I did.
Every time he held me at the airport, every time he whispered how lucky he was to have me, my chest ached with love. But when he left, the silence of my apartment felt unbearable. And Jason filled that silence. There were nights when I'd lie awake, asking myself if I was keeping Jason as a backup. If deep down, I liked the security of knowing someone else wanted me if things with Lucas didn't work out. The thought disgusted me. But I couldn't deny the truth. The guilt gnawed at me. I started dodging Jason's texts sometimes, pulling back just a little. But then, at the next run or lunch, he'd say something that made me laugh until my cheeks hurt, and all my resolve melted. I was living two lives. In one, I was Lucas's devoted girlfriend, counting down the days until we'd close the distance. In the other, I was Jason's closest confidant, soaking in the kind of attention that felt intoxicating. I told myself nothing physical had happened, that it didn't count. But late at night, when I was honest with myself, I knew I was already betraying Lucas in the worst way, by giving my heart to someone else. And I had no idea how much longer I could keep it hidden. The thing about walking on a thin line is that eventually you slip. For weeks, I kept telling myself I was in control. That Jason and I were just friends, that Lucas was the man I truly loved. But control was an illusion. The truth was, every time I let Jason deeper into my life, I was digging a hole I couldn't climb out of. It all came crashing down one Saturday night. Our office had thrown a party, nothing fancy, just drinks, music, and a chance for everyone to unwind. Lucas couldn't be there, of course, and I told myself I'd just swing by, say hi, and leave early. But Jason was there, already grinning at me across the room, and the moment I saw him, my resolve weakened. He stuck close to me all night. We laughed, shared drinks, talked in our little bubble while the rest of the office faded into the background. I knew how it looked. To anyone watching, we weren't just colleagues. We weren't just friends. We looked like a couple. And for one dangerous moment, I didn't hate it. Later, when most people had left, Jason offered to walk me home. I should have said no. I should have called an Uber. But instead, I nodded, my heart thudding in a rhythm I didn't want to admit felt like excitement. The night air was cool as we walked side by side, our arms brushing occasionally. At one point, his hand lingered against mine. I froze, my breath catching. And then he asked the question that shattered the thin line I'd been balancing on. Olivia, if Lucas wasn't in the picture, do you think we'd be together? I swear my entire body went cold. I wanted to tell him no, to shut it down, to draw the line I should have drawn months ago. But the words stuck in my throat. Because the truth? A part of me knew the answer was yes. I didn't reply. I just shook my head and mumbled something about Lucas, about loving him. Jason nodded, but I could feel the tension between us shift. He knew I hadn't truly denied it. That night, I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, my heart pounding with guilt. Lucas had called me earlier, his voice tired but warm, telling me he missed me, reminding me he was flying in next weekend. He had no idea that while he was planning to see me, I was walking home with another man who clearly wanted to take his place. The days that followed were worse. Jason didn't push, but his presence felt heavier. Every smile, every text, every inside joke was a reminder of how deep I'd let this go. And Lucas was as sweet as ever, planning our future, completely unaware that I was emotionally slipping away from him. The guilt became unbearable. One Sunday, Jason and I went for coffee like usual, but something felt different. He talked about his family, his goals, the kind of relationship he wanted. And I realized with a sinking feeling that he was describing me. He wasn't hiding it anymore. That's when I panicked. I started pulling back, skipping runs, making excuses for Sunday hangouts, answering his texts less quickly. But Jason wasn't oblivious. He asked if he had done something wrong, if I was upset. And I couldn't bring myself to say the truth. Yes, you're wrong for me. Because I already belong to someone else. That night, Lucas called. He was excited, talking about his upcoming visit, about how he'd booked us a weekend trip to the coast. His voice was filled with love, trust, certainty. And I almost broke down crying. Because here I was, drowning in guilt, terrified he'd look into my eyes next weekend and see everything I'd been hiding. The breaking point wasn't Jason's words. It wasn't even the almost handhold on the walk home. The breaking point was me finally admitting to myself that I was cheating. Maybe not physically, but emotionally in every sense of the word. And if Lucas ever found out, I knew it would destroy him. The worst part? I wasn't even sure if I had the strength to cut Jason off. The weekend I had been dreading finally arrived. Lucas flew in, smiling the moment he saw me at the airport, wrapping me in his arms like I was his entire world. For a split second, I let myself pretend everything was normal, that I wasn't carrying this heavy secret, that Jason wasn't haunting the back of my mind. But guilt is cruel. It doesn't let you breathe. Every time Lucas kissed my forehead, every time he held my hand, I felt the lie burning hotter inside me. We spent the first night together, laughing, cooking, watching movies like old times. He was so happy, so at peace, talking about our future, about moving in together once his project wrapped up in Chicago. And while he spoke, I stared at him and realized, if I didn't tell him now, I'd be lying for the rest of our lives. The next morning, as sunlight streamed through the blinds, I couldn't take it anymore. My heart was pounding so hard I thought it might crack my ribs. "Lucas," I whispered, my voice shaking. He turned, smiling softly. "Yeah." And that's when the words tumbled out, messy, broken, but honest. I told him everything. About Jason, about the runs, the coffees, the laughter. About the way I let someone else slip into my heart, even while I was still in love with him. I admitted I never kissed Jason, never crossed that physical line, but emotionally, I had betrayed him. Lucas didn't interrupt. He didn't even move. He just sat there, eyes wide, the smile fading slowly, like a light dimming out. When I finally choked out, "I'm so sorry," silence filled the room like a storm. He stood up, pacing, his hand on his forehead. "So, all those nights I trusted you, all those times I told people how loyal and strong you were already giving yourself to someone else?" Tears blurred my vision. "It wasn't like that. Olivia," he cut me off, his voice breaking. "It was like that. You don't need to kiss someone for it to be cheating. You gave him the parts of you that were supposed to be mine." I couldn't argue. He was right. He packed his bag in silence. I begged, pleaded, told him I loved him, told him Jason meant nothing compared to him. But he just shook his head. "If you loved me the way I loved you," he said, his voice low, "there wouldn't have been space for anyone else." And then he walked out. The door shut softly, but it felt louder than a gunshot. I sank onto the floor, sobbing into my hands, realizing that in trying to fill the loneliness, I had destroyed the one thing I swore I'd never lose. Jason stopped texting me eventually. Maybe he understood. Maybe he felt guilty too. It didn't matter. None of it mattered anymore. Because the truth was, I didn't want Jason. I wanted Lucas. But Lucas was gone. And the cruelest part? I had no one to blame but myself. In the end, Olivia didn't lose Lucas because of a kiss. She lost him because she gave her heart to someone else. A painful reminder that trust is fragile, and once broken, it can never be the same again.